Hi everyone, and welcome to The Sleepy Scientist. I'm really happy you're here. Tonight, we're going to go on a calm and quiet trip to learn something amazing. So get comfy, take a deep breath, and let's enjoy this peaceful science story together. Before we start, tell me in the comments, where are you watching from and what time is it for you right now? If you like relaxing science videos, don't forget to tap the like button. Now let's begin. Before there were oceans or forests or skies blue enough to cradle clouds, before names were given to wind or stone, there was only dust. Not the kind that settles quietly on shelves or is stirred by feet in an attic, but ancient cosmic dust, hot, glowing and weightless. It floated in a vast silence born from the deaths of stars. These grains had no direction, no destiny, just a gentle, endless drift through the darkness. But even in that stillness, something stirred. Gravity, soft and invisible, whispered to the dust, calling it inward. Slowly, over countless years, specks met other specks, drawn together not by choice but by the pull of this quiet force. They clung to each other, shyly at first, then with growing confidence, until clouds of dust became rivers, and rivers became spirals, tumbling toward a centre that did not yet know it would one day become home. As the dust gathered, it warmed. The pressure of so many particles pressed together ignited heat, not the fire of matches or sun, but something deeper, more primal. Collisions became dances, chaotic yet strangely beautiful. Some fragments shattered, others merged, building clumps that began to spin like lullabies, say, sung by gravity itself. Around the newborn sun, this dance grew more complex. In a wide ring of debris, one clump began to outgrow the others. It wasn't faster or smarter, but simply lucky to have more mass, lucky to pull more material into itself. This was the beginning of Earth. Not a sphere, not yet, but a molten, lopsided gathering of possibility. The early Earth was not kind. It was a place of flame and fury, a seething ball of molten rock spinning beneath an atmosphere choked with steam and gases too harsh for breath. Volcanoes bled into oceans that had not yet formed, and the surface trembled with every new layer added from space. Asteroids rained down like forgotten memories from the cosmos, delivering more dust, more heat, and, perhaps, water. Each impact was a hammer, shaping the land and deepening the molten wounds, yet also sowing the seeds of what would come. In that chaos, iron sank inward, falling to the centre, forming a core that would one day hum with magnetic breath. Lighter materials floated toward the surface, layering themselves like a soft shell forming around a bruised heart. And in this strange alchemy of violence and calm, the planet began to cool. Cooling did not mean quiet. As the crust hardened, it cracked, shifted and folded like the skin of something still dreaming. Deep beneath, magma still churned, rising through fissures, sculpting ridges and valleys before any eye could see them. Gases bubbled up from the depths, wrapping the earth in a thick, cloudy cloak. And somewhere in the volatile brew, water began to gather, not from oceans but from vapour condensing in the sky, falling as endless rain. For millions of years it rained. The drops hissed as they touched the still warm stone, but they did not stop. They pooled, they carved, they searched for low places, and over time the first oceans were born. Not blue, but grey and wild, cradling chemicals and heat in their trembling embrace. Beneath the waves, the earth continued to reshape itself, Currents moved heat, tides pulled by a young and closer moon churned the waters, and deep undersea vents whispered warmth into the cold dark. Land masses rose and sank, fragile and fleeting. Even continents, as we now call them, were not fixed. They drifted slowly, like thoughts in a half-sleeping mind. Plate tectonics, the grand grinding ballet of Earth's crust, had begun. Pieces of the shell moved, collided, embraced and broke apart. Mountains were lifted skyward only to be worn down by rain. Valleys split open like forgotten books, and through it all, the planet kept spinning, every turn a gentle lullaby to its forming self. Some scientists believe that even in these early stages, tiny miracles were beginning to stir. Deep in the oceans, where sunlight could not reach, strange vents breathed mineral-rich warmth into the water. Around them, life may have emerged, not as creatures with eyes or wings, but as delicate threads of chemistry wrapped in tiny bubbles. These protocells did not think or move, but they danced to the rhythms of molecules, absorbing, dividing, remembering how to persist. They were the first breath of life, hidden in darkness, curled in the arms of a planet that had once been nothing but dust. As Earth continued to evolve, the sky began to change. The thick clouds thinned, letting in a paler light. The atmosphere, once poisonous, began to mellow. Oxygen did not arrive all at once, but when it did, it changed everything. It gave breath to what would someday breathe and coloured the oceans a deeper hue. The crust cooled more firmly, tectonic plates settled into their long migrations, and the moon's pull slowed the Earth's spin, stretching days into longer silences. From the chaos of collisions, fire and rain, a balance was beginning to form, and in that balance there was peace, fragile, imperfect, but unmistakably there. Now, when we stand on a mountain or watch a sunset over the sea, it is easy to forget that these gentle things were born of turmoil, that the calm we now walk through was forged in heat and darkness. But the earth remembers. It holds the memory of its own making in every layer of rock, every fossil buried in quiet soil, every ripple in ancient stone. The dust that dreamed of mountains did not dream in vain. It became magma, then stone, then soil, then home, and though the planet still shifts and breathes with the slow rhythms of its past, it does so with a softness earned over 4.5 billion years. You can almost feel it if you press your hand to the ground, the warm, steady pulse of a planet that remembers where it came from. Let's drift deeper into the heart of that beginning, where Earth's story was not just one of fire and dust, but of patterns and whispers hidden in stone. As the surface cooled and continents began their long, slow waltz across the mantle's shifting heat, something remarkable was unfolding beneath and above. The Earth was not merely a rock in space anymore, it was becoming a system, a breathing, cycling whole where water, air and stone began to talk to each other. Rain did more than fall, it carved. Winds did more than blow, they shaped. And deep within the still warm mantle, convection currents turned and twisted, pulling plates along the surface like boats on invisible rivers. It was here that time, pressure and chance began sculpting the familiar bones of the world we know. Ridges, valleys, mountain ranges rising like sleeping giants, all born from the folding and faulting of ancient crust. Every ripple of rock told a story of force and waiting, of push and retreat, of minerals locked in slow conversations with heat. As the land continued to shift, Volcanoes rose and fell and the earth kept breathing. With every rotation, the surface met the cold of night and the light of day, building patterns of rhythm and contrast. Ice began to form at the poles, whispering of balance. Glaciers crept across continents, carving new valleys and shaping coastlines with a patience only Earth could afford. With them came the grinding of stone into soil, the laying down of sediment that would one day hold fossils, roots, and the echoes of footsteps not yet imagined. Tectonic plates, still restless, collided and diverged. When they met, mountains rose. When they parted, oceans deepened. Earth was not a static world, but a living puzzle in constant motion, shifting not in decades but in ages. And always, there was the moon, that companion born of a titanic impact, possibly with a Mars-sized body called Theia, still circled above, influencing tides and tilts. Its pull slowed Earth's rotation, stabilized its axis, and in doing so gave the planet seasons. These seasons became time's heartbeat, creating cycles of warmth and cold, bloom and sleep, storm and calm. They told living things when to rise, when to rest, when to scatter their seeds or turn their leaves. Long before clocks, there were shadows that moved across stones, leaves that followed the sun, and water that froze and thawed with the rhythm of the year. Time itself on Earth was being etched not just in geology, but in light and motion, in temperature and tide. The continents were not finished growing. Supercontinents formed and broke apart in slow, silent dramas that spanned hundreds of millions of years. One such landmass, called Rodinia, once gathered most of Earth's land into a single massive shape. Its breakup gave rise to new ocean basins, currents, and coastlines. Later came Pangaea, perhaps the most famous supercontinent, forming immense interior deserts and wrapping much of the world in a single expanse of dry and dramatic landscape. When it too broke apart, it gave us the continents we now know, drifting like forgotten memories across the vastness of blue. These shifts did more than redraw maps. They guided the paths of life, reshaped climates, and created new ecologies. Mountains rose to catch rain. Valleys formed to cradle rivers. Every crack and fold held the potential to shape the living future. Minerals formed too, each one a crystal story of heat and pressure. Quartz, feldspar, mica and olivine, forged in the deep, cooled into sparkling lattices that would later be ground into sand or lifted into peaks. Diamonds formed under unimaginable pressures, locked in kimberlite pipes deep within the earth. Gold and silver collected in veins, iron painted rocks red, and copper shimmered in turquoise veins. These were not just elements, they were the fingerprints of Earth's process, clues to the ancient languages of magma and metamorphosis. Each mineral told of temperature, of chemistry, of time held still for a moment before shifting again. The air began to clear. With more oxygen and less haze, the sky turned a deeper blue, and the stars sharpened into clearer focus. The sun, still young but aging steadily, warmed the surface with more precision. Plants, algae, and microbes flourished, taking advantage of the light and the minerals. Stromatolites rose in shallow seas, layered by generations of microbial mats, capturing bubbles of time in stone. These structures, humble and ancient, were the first great cities of life, built not with tools or thought but with rhythm and light. By now the earth had a kind of memory, not the memory of thought but of form. Rivers remembered their courses even after floods. Mountains remembered the collisions that birthed them. Soils remembered the glaciers that carved them. And within this memory, life continued its slow and subtle shaping. The earth, born of fire and silence, had become a place of cycles, of rock that melts and reforms, of water that falls and rises, of carbon that moves from air to leaf to root to stone. Nothing is ever truly gone here, only changed, moved, softened, or buried. And so, when we ask how the earth was formed, the answer is not a single moment, but a lullaby sung over billions of years. A lullaby of dust gathering, of heat igniting, of crust folding and breaking, of oceans pouring from sky, of continents drifting and returning. It is a song of elements becoming landscapes, of magma becoming mountain, of rain becoming river. It is a quiet, endless transformation, so slow we almost forget it is happening, yet so powerful that everything we are stands upon its rhythm. In every pebble there is a memory of stars. In every breeze, the echo of a young planet finding its balance. And in every heartbeat, the subtle pulse of a world still forming, still breathing, still dreaming its next shape. Now imagine this earth, once a storm of fire and stone, now a cradle of soft winds and steady tides. It has grown until, in Hawaii, lava meets ocean in a more direct embrace. As molten rock spills into the sea, it flashes into steam, forming clouds that curl and dance with light. The cooled lava hardens into new coastline, black and jagged at first, but soon smoothed by waves, kissed by tides. This is land literally being born before our eyes. And it's not empty. It quickly becomes a place for seeds carried by wind, for birds to rest, for insects to begin the work of life. Water makes it livable. Rain falls into cracks, breaks the rock grain by grain. Roots follow, moss arrives, then ferns, then forests. The sequence is always the same and always miraculous. Fire gives form, water gives soul. Sometimes the memory of this process is etched deep in caves. In places like Yellowstone, geysers paint mineral terraces in oranges and blues, shaped by thermophilic bacteria that thrive in heat. These tiny life forms are among Earth's oldest, and they tell us that life doesn't just survive near fire, it begins there. They find comfort in the warmth, draw energy from chemical bonds rather than sunlight, and live in places too hot for most others. Yet there they are, lining the hot springs in shimmering layers, turning the memory of fire into colour and rhythm. In them, we glimpse the origins of all that followed. Even the Earth's most fertile landscapes owe themselves to this union. The terraced rice fields of Southeast Asia grow in volcanic soil. So do the vineyards of Italy, the banana plantations of Central America, the lush gardens of the Azores. These lands are green because they were once red. Their roots are in ash. Their bounty is the result of time, water, and patient fire. The nutrients released by eruptions, potassium, calcium, magnesium, are not just elements. They are gifts from deep time. And water, always water, carries them upward, spreads them across fields, feeds the seeds, and draws life from sleep. The Earth's surface continues to change. New volcanoes still rise from the seafloor. Some will reach the surface and become islands. Others will remain hidden, shaping currents and ecosystems in the dark. Geysers still erupt. Hot springs still shimmer. Beneath every mountain range lies a story of compression and heat. Beneath every ocean trench, a tale of sinking and melting. And in every river, a whisper from the sky. These stories are not past, they are present, unfolding beneath our feet. The energy of the earth is not gone, it is simply slower, quieter, more balanced. Fire still lives in the mantle, water still rolls from clouds. Together they sculpt and sustain. Together they carry the memory of beginnings. Their union is not a thing to fear, but to honour. Without it there would be no continents, no oceans, no life. Without it there would be no you. And so the next time you see steam rising from a crack in stone, or feel warm water on your hands from a deep spring, remember what you're touching. It is not just heat, not just water. It is a handshake 4 billion years old. A vow between elements, a lullaby still being sung. And the earth listens, cradling their song in its bones. Now let us follow the trail of steam and stone into the quiet aftermath, the gentle places where fire has softened and water has lingered long enough to bring healing. This is not the chaos of eruption or the fury of rising magma, but the long, slow exhale that comes after the storm, the part where the earth sighs and lets things grow. Across the planet there are places where the evidence of fire's touch is visible but no longer burning. Lava fields, once jagged and lifeless, now carry moss like soft blankets. Craters once black and raw cradle blue lakes so still they seem like mirrors to the sky. In these places time has passed, the fire has quieted, the water has stayed, and the land, scarred but fertile, has begun to dream again. In Japan, the ring of volcanoes that circle the islands has not just formed mountains, it has gifted the land with thousands of hot springs or onsen. These springs are not just water and heat, they are a cultural ritual, a communion between body and earth. People soak in them not to escape nature but to return to it, to feel the pulse of warmth rising from the ground and washing over skin. The minerals carried in that warmth, sulfur, iron, calcium, soak into the bones, reminding us that healing can come from below, that sometimes the best medicine is born in fire and carried upward by water. The earth does not just erupt, it soothes. In New Zealand, another volcanic land, the ground is rich with geothermal features, bubbling mud pools, steaming lakes, boiling rivers that snake through ancient forests. These landscapes are alive, but gently so. The fire beneath does not shout. It murmurs, hums, radiates. People live alongside these features not with fear but with respect. Buildings are heated by the earth itself. Energy is drawn from steam that rises from deep chambers, turning turbines and lighting homes. This is not domination, it is harmony. Quiet agreement between the fire that once shaped the land and the people who now walk upon it. Water makes that agreement possible. It carries the warmth, softens the edge, makes fire usable, livable, even generous. And in Yellowstone, deep beneath the beauty of pine and bison, lies one of the largest supervolcanoes on Earth. It sleeps now, its last great breath taken thousands of years ago, but even in sleep it breathes. Geysers like Old Faithful erupt in steady rhythm. Pools shine in impossible colours, turquoise, orange, deep cobalt, each hue born from life forms that thrive in scalding temperatures. These microbial artists paint with pigments we cannot replicate. They remind us that fire and water do not only shape land, they shape life itself. In these pools we see echoes of the earliest Earth. A world where heat and fluid combine to create the perfect conditions for cells to begin their long journey toward thought, toward breath, toward consciousness. Everywhere we look, we find traces of this elemental partnership. In the black sand beaches of the Canary Islands, each grain is a memory of volcanic glass, shattered and rounded by waves. In the terraced rice paddies of the Philippines, ancient eruptions provided the soil and rain carved the shape. In the deep fjords of Chile and Norway, volcanic roots were carved by glacial melt, leaving behind steep, water-filled valleys that reflect the sky. Even the coral reefs of the Pacific trace their shape around extinct volcanic islands, building living cities upon the bones of fire. There is no part of the Earth untouched by this union. It is the oldest relationship the planet knows, and still new land is forming. Off the coast of Tonga, a volcanic eruption under the sea created a brand new island, rising from the ocean in steam and ash. Within months, birds arrived. Plants followed. The process begins again. Fire lays the foundation. Water brings the life. They do not ask for applause. They do not rush. They simply begin. And the earth, shaped by this rhythm for billions of years, continues to hold space for their work. This is the gentle truth of our planet. It is never done becoming. Mountains rise only to be worn down, volcanoes sleep only to wake again. Rivers change course, lakes appear and vanish. What was once scorched becomes green. What was once flooded becomes fertile. The earth is not a static thing, it is movement, exchange, a dialogue between below and above. And we, born of this place, carry that same rhythm. Our bodies are warm, our blood holds salt. We cry water, we burn energy. We too are made of fire and water. So when you watch steam curl from a mountainside or feel hot spring water wrap around your ankles, listen closely. That is the earth remembering. It is whispering the story of how it softened its rage into rivers, how it turned explosion into soil, how it met its own heat with its own coolness, and found a balance. That story is not over. It lives in every storm, every bloom, every birth. Fire and water still meet beneath our feet, shaping tomorrow even now. And perhaps on some quiet evening you will step outside and feel the warmth of the day still rising from the stones, while dew gathers on the leaves. You will feel both elements present at once, heat and moisture, tension and ease. You will breathe them in and understand without needing to say a word that this is how the world began, and this is how it continues. Not in conflict, but in conversation. Fire holding hands with water, building a home where life can rest. There was a time when the sky was not blue, when the heavens above the earth held no birds, no clouds, not even the sun in the way we now see it. Instead, the sky was a veil of ash and steam, thick with gases that wrapped the world in a dim, restless twilight. Not groaned with the heat of a newborn planet, exhaling sulfur, carbon dioxide, methane and ammonia into an atmosphere too heavy for breath, too hot for rain. This was not the air we know. It was a molten sky, born not of peace but of persistence. The early earth was still shedding the last of its birth heat, and the skies bore witness to every flare and crack that shook the surface. Each eruption bled fire into the air. Each meteor left a trail of glowing dust, and for a long while the sky did not sleep. It churned, it brooded, it watched. But even in this restless state, change had already begun. Gravity held everything close, every molecule, every whisper of gas, every particle of ash drifting from volcanic mouths, and in this holding the sky thickened, became a blanket. Heat was trapped beneath it. Oceans of vapour hung in suspension, and clouds were not white and fluffy but dark and endless, smeared across the heavens like bruises on a sleeping face. Still, light tried to push through. The sun, young and smaller than it is now, sent soft golden pulses across the void. Some rays bounced away, others slipped through gaps in the veil, and slowly, like breath in the cold, they began to warm the earth from above. This warmth stirred the oceans that had begun to form, not from gentle rains but from deluges, rains that lasted millennia, hammering the surface with the condensed breath of the sky. The water boiled where it landed, met still hot rock and hissed into vapour, then fell again in a cycle that scrubbed the air and wore grooves into stone. These rains were not gentle, they were sculptors, and as they fell they began the long process of washing gases from the atmosphere. Carbon, sulphur, the raw edges of a sky too harsh to nurture. They carved the land, they thickened the seas, and in time they cooled the planet. Not all at once, but in fits and sighs, with each storm pulling the sky a little closer to calm. Meanwhile, deep in the oceans and near the surface, chemical dances were beginning. Sunlight, what little filtered through, met molecules in the water, sparking reactions that would one day lead to life. But even here, the sky had a role. The gases it held, the way it filtered light, the pressure it applied to the surface, all these shaped which reactions could survive. Methane created a greenhouse effect that kept the planet warm. Ammonia lingered in pockets. Hydrogen escaped into space, and oxygen, precious and rare, was barely a whisper. It would take life to give the sky its current breath, but even before that the sky was changing, slowly, dreamily, as if preparing for something it didn't yet understand. The Earth's magnetic field, spinning from the molten iron of its core, began to protect this sky from being stripped away by solar winds. Invisible lines of force wrapped the planet, deflecting charged particles from the sun, letting the atmosphere thicken, mature, and hold. Without this magnetic shield, the sky might have vanished into space, but with it the gases stayed. They gathered, mixed, reacted. Lightning arced between clouds, igniting nitrogen and oxygen into compounds that drifted down to feed the early seas. These were not just storms, they were the first chemistry sets, flashing with energy, painting the air with new possibilities. And above it all, the moon had begun its slow journey away from the Earth, pulling tides behind it, stirring the oceans, affecting how gases moved and settled. Its gentle gravity tugged at water and an atmosphere alike, creating rhythms, waves, winds, and the earliest hints of cycles. The sky, once a place of chaos, was becoming a place of pattern. The spinning of the Earth created a daily dance of shadow and light. The tilt of its axis whispered of seasons yet to come. The clouds began to organise, the storms began to pulse, and though there was still no blue, no breeze we would recognise, the sky was learning how to breathe. Volcanoes too shifted their tune. While still erupting, they began releasing different balances of gases. Less hydrogen sulfide, more carbon dioxide, less ammonia, more nitrogen. Each shift altered the tone of the atmosphere. And as these changes accumulated, something subtle but profound occurred. The sky began to lighten, not in brightness, but in weight. The thickest clouds slowly broke apart, the layers of steam thinned. For the first time, light began to scatter, not just pass through but reflect, refract, bend into colour. Blue was still centuries away, but the haze was lifting, and with it came clarity. Imagine standing on that young Earth, perhaps on a hardened volcanic plain, with steam still curling from cracks in the ground. The air would have a tang to it, metallic, thick, warm. The horizon would blur in smoke. Above, the sky would be a swirling canvas of grey and copper, painted with drifting ash and clouds that shimmered with static. No birds, no moon visible, just the slow swirl of an atmosphere in transition. And yet, in that silence, the planet was preparing itself. The ingredients were settling. The heat was dissipating. And far above, high in the upper layers of the atmosphere, ultraviolet light from the sun began splitting water vapour into hydrogen and oxygen. The hydrogen, light and swift, escaped into space, but the oxygen stayed. For now it was still too reactive, too unstable. But the sky remembered it, held it, waited for the right moment. That moment would come when life learned to breathe. But even before the first cell captured sunlight, even before photosynthesis filled the air with the songs of plants, the sky had begun to sleep. The chaos was softening. The molten clouds had thinned. And though the earth still burned in places, the heavens above had quieted into a slow, swirling rest. The sky, at last, had begun to dream. Let's drift deeper into that dreaming sky, into the long lull that followed the earth's first fierce breaths. The molten atmosphere had begun to rest, and in its stillness something gentle unfolded. As volcanic eruptions softened in frequency and oceans stretched across the crust like sheets drawn over sleeping stone, the air above began to rearrange itself into something quieter, more ordered. Nitrogen. Once, just one voice in the crowded chorus of gases became the lead, stable and ever-present. It filled the space between molecules like the low hum of silence itself. Carbon dioxide, once dominant, had been pulled into rocks and seas, locked into limestone and shells, sequestered beneath layers of sediment as if tucked away for later. And oxygen, still new and rare, was gathering in secret, crafted not by geology, but by life. Below the sky, in shallow pools and warm oceans, cyanobacteria had begun their slow, invisible revolution. Tiny thread-like creatures, without eyes or limbs, pulsed with a rhythm older than memory. They captured sunlight not to see but to transform. Through photosynthesis, they broke water apart, hydrogen for their energy, oxygen as a quiet exhale. They didn't know the effect of their breath, but the sky did. With each bubble that rose from the sea, the air changed. Oxygen, light and reactive, met iron in the water and turned it to rust, settling in layers upon the ocean floor, painting stone with red. For millions of years, this oxygen never reached the sky. It was caught, bound, hidden, but the cyanobacteria kept breathing, and one day the oceans could no longer hold what they made. The oxygen spilled upward, not in a flood, but in a slow rising tide. The atmosphere, once thick with greenhouse gases and sulfur clouds, began to shift again. The ozone layer formed, a fragile, invisible shield that cradled Earth and blocked the harshest ultraviolet light. With this protection, the sky began to lighten. The sun's rays, scattered by nitrogen and touched by the trace amounts of oxygen, started to spread into blue. Not the rich blue of a cloudless noon, but a pale suggestion, soft, hesitant, like the first morning after a long night. The sky had found its colour, and with it, a new face to show the world. The great oxygenation event was not kind. Many ancient life forms adapted to an anoxic world could not survive the new breath. To them, oxygen was poison, and yet from this purge came promise. Oxygen didn't just fill lungs, it fueled possibility. It allowed energy to be stored, movement to become complex, life to grow in size and intricacy. And the sky, watching it all from above, began to reflect that change. Clouds became more varied, shaped by temperature gradients and moisture cycles. Winds developed patterns, tracing across continents with purpose. Storms grew into seasons, and seasons became the metronome of time. As Earth cooled, high-altitude clouds began to form, cirrus wisps made of ice floating like delicate brushstrokes against the widening blue. Lower clouds too, cumulus, thick with promise, and stratus, stretched thin like a sky in thought. These clouds, formed by the constant cycle of evaporation and condensation, began to regulate the Earth's temperature. They reflected sunlight by day, trapping warmth by night. They carried rain inland, nurturing the first forests and the shallow roots of mosses that clung to stone. The sky, once only a lid on the world, had become a living participant, an atmosphere not just to contain but to connect. And with connection came weather, not just storms but climate, a memory written in wind and water. The tilt of the Earth, set in motion long ago by the impact that formed the moon, now choreographed the seasons. Summer and winter arrived not as surprises, but as expected guests. Rainfall came in patterns, droughts taught resilience, the sky wasn't random, it was responsive. It adjusted, echoed, responded to what the surface whispered. Forests grew thicker in places where the air held more warmth. Deserts opened in regions where mountains blocked the clouds. Glaciers formed and melted in rhythm with solar cycles. The earth and sky were no longer separate. They were dancers, twined in slow steps that echoed across millennia. The atmosphere grew more layered. Troposphere near the ground, dense and full of life. Stratosphere above it, calm and cold, home to ozone. Mesosphere, thermosphere, exosphere, each with its own role, each shaped by the temperature and sunlight and composition. These layers weren't stacked like walls, but blended like tones in music. They carried sound, bent light, shielded against meteors. The auroras, green and violet veils that shimmered near the poles, began to appear, born from the dance of solar winds and magnetic fields. They were the sky's quiet celebration, the Earth's slow exhale painted in colour. Over time, the blue deepened. It grew richer, clearer. It mirrored the oceans and invited the rise of flight. Insects with wings began to explore the space between ground and cloud. Birds born later filled it with song and shadow. The sky, once empty, had become full. Its silence replaced by the rustle of feathers, the hum of bees, the roar of wind between branches. And every breath these creatures took was made possible by the long, patient work of the atmosphere, filtered, balanced, protected. The clouds became storytellers. They carried moisture from sea to land, erased old shapes, painted new ones. In some places, they held thunder. In others, snow. The sky became a library of moments, every sunrise a new page, every sunset a soft closing. Stars returned at night, no longer hidden by haze, but clear against a backdrop of navy blue. The moon, now steady in its orbit, cast light across the sleeping earth. And comets passed overhead, watched not in fear, but in wonder. This was no longer the molten sky of Earth's infancy. It was something wiser, more knowing. It had learned how to cradle life without crushing it, how to filter light without hiding it, how to shift without losing form. Become the sky we now recognize, not perfect, but patient. A sky that remembers being fire and shadow, now content to be breath and breeze. So when you look up and see the blue stretching beyond trees and rooftops, remember that it was not always so. That sky was earned. It was forged from chaos, sculpted by light, painted by time. Its blue is not just colour, it is history, peace and promise. A soft testament to the Earth's ability to change. And though the sky no longer burns, it still breathes. Every gust of wind, every drop of rain, every golden sunrise is the sky's lullaby, still humming after a long, long sleep. Now let us return one final time to the sky, not as it was, but as it has become. A living ceiling stretched above the world, transparent but full of stories, quiet but always speaking. Today, when we look up, we see a canvas brushed with blue and softened by clouds. A dome that seems empty until we notice its movements, the drifting of air, the formation of storms, the slow swirl of jet streams carrying weather across continents. But behind this calm facade lies the memory of fire, of chaos, of a molten past that once held no light. The sky has not forgotten what it was. It holds its history in its layers, in its winds, in the composition of every breath we take. Every molecule of oxygen, nitrogen, or water vapor was once part of something ancient, birthed in the crush of volcanoes, shaped by oceans, drawn upward through the green sighs of forests and the long exhalations of life. The atmosphere continues to evolve, quietly but deliberately. Human beings, late arrivals in the Earth's long tail, have left fingerprints in the air. Carbon dioxide levels, once balanced by forest and sea, have climbed again. Methane leaks from wells and melting permafrost. Tiny particles of soot and dust drift upward, altering the way sunlight scatters. Yet even in this new chapter, the sky responds with its usual patience. It moves heat across the globe, forms more storms to cool overheated regions, thickens its cloud cover to reflect excess warmth. It is still listening, still adjusting, still seeking balance, even as we test its limits. The ozone layer, once threatened by chemicals too clever and too careless, thinned like a wound near the poles. But when its damage was understood, the world responded, and slowly, with changes in behavior and law, that layer began to heal. The atmosphere, given time and care, is capable of recovery. It is not fragile, it is resilient, but it is not limitless. Its balance depends on the cycles of Earth, on the rhythms of plants, oceans, and even the quiet decisions we make each day. The sky does not judge, it simply reflects. In the upper layers, invisible currents shape our weather and our days. The jet streams, narrow bands of fast-moving air, guide the paths of storms, bringing rain to one land and drought to another. El Niño and La Niña, Oceanic moods that sway the atmosphere's tone shift weather patterns across the globe. These are not new, they've been happening for thousands of years, but now we track them, name them, prepare for their arrival. The sky's dance, once mysterious, is now charted in maps and satellites, its breadth measured in pressure systems and humidity graphs. And yet, no matter how much we know, the sky remains a wonder. Predictions are made, models are built, but every morning brings a surprise, a sudden mist, a golden break in the clouds, a hush before rain. Above it all, the thermosphere and exosphere drift into space where air becomes sparse and silence reigns. Here, the sky lets go of Earth and merges with the cosmic sea. This is where auroras bloom in green and violet, tracing magnetic lines that pulse from the core. These lights, quiet as dreams, are reminders that the sky does not end. It simply opens. The boundary between Earth and beyond is not a wall, but a threshold, and through it pass signals, satellites, whispers of human thought sent into orbit and beyond. We have filled the sky with songs and data, with calls and images bouncing from ground to heavens and back. The sky now carries our stories, and in the quiet of night, when the sun slips behind the curve of the world, the stars return. They shine not in competition with the sky, but because of it. The clarity of their light depends on the purity of our air, the stillness of our winds, the absence of too much light from below. In ancient times, the stars were maps and myths, written across the firmament by those who watched with wonder. Now they are destinations, data points, possibilities. But the wonder remains. The sky still invites us to look up, to wonder where we came from and where we are going. And in its sense, it answers with presence. Birds cross the sky each morning, tracing paths shaped by instinct and wind. Planes join them, engines humming, drawing white threads behind them. Rain falls, sometimes soft, sometimes wild, feeding rivers and lakes, washing leaves, stirring soil. Snow drifts in winter, a lace of frozen sky returning to earth. The clouds move, change, vanish. The blue deepens at midday, fades at dusk. And through it all, the sky watches, not with eyes, but with the openness of air, with the generosity of space. It holds everything, allows everything, changes everything without needing to be seen. It is easy to forget the sky. We walk beneath it without looking. We speak of the weather, but not of the wonder. And yet it is the sky that carries our breath to the trees, that delivers the water we drink, that softens the sun and cools the night. It is the sky that cradles the flight of bees, the lift of wings, the arc of rainbows. It is the sky that reflects our own becoming, once wild, now calm, always evolving. It has held comets and kites, ash and auroras, laughter and lightning. It has seen the rise of mountains and the fall of empires, and through it all it has remained. Changing, yes, but constant in its presence. So the next time you look up and see a clear stretch of blue, or a cloud shaped like a memory, or stars blinking in cold clarity, know that you are looking at a survivor. A being, not of flesh, but of rhythm. A sky that once burned, that once howled, that once hid the stars in molten shroud. A sky that learned to soften, a sky that slept, and in that sleep it dreamed us into being, not as rulers, but as listeners, not as owners, but as part of its breath. And even now, as it hums with jet trails and echoes our technology, it waits for us to remember, to look, to breathe, to honour the long, slow sleep from which the heavens awoke. Beneath the soft moss and gentle hum of rivers, beneath the shifting plates and sleeping roots of mountains, there is silence that is not empty. It is deep, old and full of motion. The Earth's crust, thin as it may be on a planetary scale, holds a secret world of slow breath and hidden song. We walk on stone and soil and imagine it firm and still, yet beneath us is a realm of drift and heat, of quiet tremors and slow exhalations of energy. It does not speak in human tongues, but it whispers in waves. Waves that ripple through rock, tectonic sighs that unfold over eons, pulses of pressure that gently reshape the face of the world. These are not accidents. They are the Earth remembering itself. And as we learn to listen, we begin to hear the soft voice beneath the crust. The crust is not one smooth skin, but a puzzle of plates, floating on a mantle that is solid yet moves like syrup. This movement is driven by the heat trapped deep within the planet, a leftover warmth from Earth's formation, mixed with the decay of radioactive elements buried in its core. That heat rises, slowly but endlessly, setting the mantle into motion. Currents like deep-sea tides, invisible but immense. These convection cells pull and push at the plates above, causing them to drift, collide and part. We call it plate tectonics, but beneath the science is a quiet truth. The Earth is never still. It is always turning itself over, making new land, swallowing old, sending ripples through the crust that we sometimes feel as earthquakes, sometimes see as rising mountains, and often never notice at all. At the edges of these plates where they meet, the Earth speaks most clearly. In subduction zones, one plate dives beneath another, melting slowly into the mantle. This sinking does not happen in a moment. It is a dance of pressure and heat that can take millions of years. Above these zones, volcanoes often form, rising like steam from a simmering pot, releasing gases and ash, reminding us of the motion beneath. In other places, plates pull apart and magma seeps upward, creating new crust as it cools, mid-ocean ridges that stretch for thousands of miles beneath the sea, unseen but vital. These ridges are scars of creation, where the planet gently unfolds itself to make something new. Sometimes plates slide past each other, neither rising nor sinking but grinding in slow tension. The San Andreas Fault is one such place, a crack that stretches through California like a line of unspoken thought. Here, pressure builds in silence until it releases suddenly, in a jolt we call an earthquake. But even in stillness, the Earth is preparing, shifting its weight, adjusting. The crust is not a shield, it is a veil. Beneath it lies a world where time moves differently, where pressure is memory and heat is thought. The crust itself varies in thickness. Under oceans, it is thin, just 5 to 10 kilometers. Beneath continents, it thickens, sometimes reaching 70 kilometers. Yet even at its deepest, it is but the skin of the planet. Below it lies the mantle, vast and slow, stretching thousands of kilometers toward the core. The mantle is solid rock, yes, but under such pressure and heat that it flows, not quickly, but with the persistence of breath. We cannot see it, but we hear it. Seismic waves from earthquakes bounce and bend as they move through these layers, and by studying their paths, scientists can map the deep interior of the Earth like doctors using ultrasound. The Earth has no heartbeat, but it has vibrations, frequencies, pulses that travel beneath our feet and tell of its shape, its state, its quiet inner life. Magma chambers lie hidden within the crust, pockets of some molten rock that rise when the pressure is right. Some feed volcanoes, some stay buried, cooling into granite conductor bodies that will not be revealed for millions of years. Others rise higher, fill with gas, and explode in great bursts that reshape landscapes. But not all magma is violent. Some rises gently, oozes across plains, builds new land in slow layers. In Iceland, Hawaii, and other volcanic lands, this slow birth of stone is visible, warm, and ongoing. It is the planet expressing itself in form. There are also places where the crust stretches and thins, rift zones where land is slowly pulling apart. In East Africa, such a rift is opening, stretching the continent inch by inch, preparing over millions of years to form a new ocean. These rifts are not violent, though they can host earthquakes and volcanic activity. They are slow tears in the skin of the world, places where the mantle breathes more openly, where new crust will form from the inside out. And within the crust itself are layers of rock, folded and faulted, bent and broken. These layers hold the fossils of ancient seas, the coal of long-dead forests, the oil of plankton pressed beneath salt and heat. They are archives of change, written in pressure and time. Sedimentary rocks laid down by rivers and oceans become metamorphic when buried deep and heated, changed not by destruction but by transformation. Granite cools from magma, basalt flows from lava, and stone forms from sand. Every rock is a story of what the earth once was and what it will become again. Beneath cities, beneath deserts, beneath the deepest roots of trees, the crust hums. Its motion is too slow for us to feel daily, but it is constant. Mountains rise because of it. Earthquakes rumble because of it. Volcanoes speak because of it. And somewhere far below, this crust floats on the mantle, which flows above the outer core, which spins around the solid heart of iron and nickel. That inner core, dense and hot, may be slowly rotating, adding another layer of rhythm to the planet's song. It generates Earth's magnetic field, a shield that protects the crust and all life upon it from solar wind and radiation. This magnetic field is not fixed. It drifts, it wobbles, it has flipped many times in the past. Even the compass in your hand listens to the whispers from beneath the crust. And so we walk on ground that seems still, but is not. We build homes on ridges made by ancient uplift. We drink from aquifers carved by time and pressure. We rest on stone that once flowed like liquid. The earth beneath is not finished. It is a slow-breathing giant, a patient architect, a keeper of heat and memory. It turns over its thoughts in magma and pressure, shaping the surface from within. The crust is the meeting place of deep time and daily life, a veil that both protects and reveals. If you lie very still and place your palm against the ground, you might not feel anything at first. But wait, breathe, listen. The earth is whispering. In the groan of a shifting fault, in the sigh of rising magma, in the slow bend of rock deep beneath your feet, it is telling its story. It is speaking in stone, and it has so much more to say. Let us descend even deeper now, beyond the surface cracks and quiet drift of tectonic plates, into the slow, dense layers where time folds in on itself and pressure becomes language. The crust we walk upon is only the outermost shell, and though it holds the memory of water, wind and life, beneath it lies a world without light, without breath, but not without purpose. The mantle, vast, warm and quietly churning, rises like thought and sinks like memory. It is the realm where rock flows, where heat speaks in currents, where the earth holds its oldest secrets. And as it moves, so too does everything above it. What we call continents, what we name mountains and oceans, are simply the surface ripples of this deeper tide. The crust listens to the mantle, and the mantle listens to the core. And the core, silent, spinning, dense beyond imagination, is the heart of it all. The upper mantle is solid, but it behaves like something else entirely. It deforms slowly under stress, allowing tectonic plates to float and drift. In this layer, mantle plumes rise like invisible columns, lifting heat and surreal from the deep to the base of the crust. These plumes feed hotspots, places where volcanic islands like Hawaii are born not from plate boundaries, but from within. The heat that powers these plumes is not new. It is the leftover breath of planetary birth, the slow decay of radioactive isotopes like uranium and thorium, all releasing energy trapped since the Earth first formed. That energy does not escape in flame. It moves like dreams, upward, outward, patiently pushing, nudging the crust from below, never in haste, always in rhythm. The deeper you go, the more pressure rules. Rocks no longer break, they bend. At around 6 kilometers below the surface, the mantle shifts its structure. Minerals reorganize, denser forms emerge, and waves from distant earthquakes change speed and direction. Seismologists have traced these changes, mapping a boundary that marks the transition between the upper and lower mantle. These layers are not just zones of heat and rock, they are transitions of form and thought, boundaries where Earth itself redefines what it means to be solid. And in these changes, energy is stored and released. Mantle convection becomes a cycle not just of motion but of memory. The lower mantle, extending down to the outer core, is hotter, denser, more sluggish. It is here that heat builds until it cannot help but rise, but the resistance is great, and so the rise is slow, like honey pushed through stone. The mantle does not rush. It shifts continents over millions of years, splits supercontinents, floods plains with basaltic lava, feeds chains of volcanoes that stretch across oceans and form new land in silence. The Andes, the Himalayas, the Mid-Atlantic Ridge, all are shaped by the motion beneath, by rock that flows with time as its tool, and in this motion lies Earth's balance. Were the mantle still, the crust would cool and harden, the magnetic field would fade, and the planet would fall silent. But it is not still. It is always dreaming upward. Even deeper lies the outer core, a sea of molten iron and nickel moving in vast looping currents. This liquid metal ocean, spinning with the planet's rotation, generates our magnetic field. This field shields the atmosphere from solar wind, protects the ozone layer, guides the migration of birds and the navigation of compasses. It flickers in auroras and pulses in the deep quiet of the Earth. The outer core cannot be touched, but its signature is everywhere. Seismic waves slow or vanish when they reach it, and satellites measure its shifting field from space. Beneath us it swirls and murmurs, the source of a planetary hum that never stops. At the centre of it all lies the inner core, a solid sphere of iron and nickel as hot as the surface of the sun, yet held firm by pressure so immense that even metal cannot melt. This is the planet's beating heart, spinning slowly within the liquid sea of the outer core. Some scientists believe it rotates slightly faster than the rest of the Earth, creating a rhythm between layers. It is small compared to the planet's size, but massive in presence. It holds the deepest gravity, the oldest heat, the most compressed memory, and though it does not speak in words, it shapes everything above it. We will never walk there, no drill can reach it, but we know it is there, not through sight but through listening. Earthquakes send waves through the planet, and these waves change as they pass through different materials. Some bend, others reflect. Some are stopped entirely. From these responses we trace the boundaries of the core, the mantle, the crust. From these echoes we hear the architecture of the world. Earth's layers are not hidden, they are humming, and science is our way of hearing that hum more clearly. These layers speak not only in geology but in life. The rise of continents creates habitats. The fall of plates feeds the oceans with minerals. The warmth of the mantle drives hydrothermal vents, where life began in darkness. The magnetic field born in the core shields all biology from radiation. Even the air we breathe, the water we drink, the ground we plant in exists because of the silent architecture beneath. The crust may be thin, but its roots are deep, and every tremor, every mountain, every island that rises from the sea is an expression of the Earth's deep voice. And so we build homes and cities, not just on rock, but on rhythm. We live in the spaces shaped by ancient pressure and silent heat. We carve tunnels, extract minerals, drill for water and oil, all the while walking upon a shell that floats atop a world in motion. The Earth is not fragile, but it is alive, not with thought, but with process. And those processes are slow, immense, and filled with grace. Beneath every step we take is not silence, but story. A story written in pressure, in heat, in time beyond imagining. A story where continents drift like sleepwalkers, where mountains rise and erode, where the mantle carries the breath of fire toward the waiting crust. A story that reminds us we are never standing still. The ground may feel solid, but it is always becoming, and beneath it the whispers continue, ancient, patient, and ever moving toward the surface. Now let us surface gently from the deep, not with haste but with reverence, for what lies beneath the crust is not just the engine of our planet, but its quiet soul, the forces we've explored, heat rising through the mantle, metal spinning in the core, plate shifting with slow insistence. These are not distant, abstract mechanics. They shape the land we know, they cradle the air we breathe, and they influence the course of life in ways so subtle we often forget they exist. But the crust, the thinnest layer, is where the language of the deep finally meets the light. And it is here, in soil and stone, that we begin to hear the Earth's whispers not just as scientists but as storytellers, as witnesses, as part of the unfolding rhythm. Consider the way a mountain stands. It appears unmoved, ancient, a symbol of stillness. And yet it was once the rising edge of a plate forced upward by collision, bent and broken, lifted mile by mile over millennia. The Himalayas are still growing, the Alps still shift. Even the Appalachian Range, now weathered and worn, was once taller than today's Rockies. Every peak is a pulse, every ridge a reminder. And in valleys carved by glaciers or rivers, we see where that pressure found release. These forms are not static. They breathe. They rise and fall with the planet's slow exhale. They are the surface's answer to the movements far below. The crust, shaped by these forces, becomes more than just a platform. It becomes a memory. In sedimentary layers, we read the story of ancient seas that no longer exist. In fault lines, we trace the moments when pressure became motion, when the Earth's need to shift overcame its ability to wait. In metamorphic rocks, we see the signatures of transformation, not destruction, but quiet change under heat and time. And in volcanic rock, cooled from liquid fire, we find moments when the mantle reached for the stars. Every rock is a journal. Every grain of sand once had shape, weight, context. We walk upon archives, not accidents. Even beneath our forests and fields, the crust holds gifts forged by time. Minerals form where fluids move through cracks, depositing crystals in hidden pockets, gold, silver, quartz, and garnet, all born from water meeting heat. Fossil fuels, though complex in consequence, are the result of life buried under layers, pressed into coal and oil and gas. Even freshwater aquifers lie within porous stone, filled drop by drop over thousands of years. The crust stores these resources not as treasure, but as consequence. It offers them in silence and asks only for balance in return. And yet even this thin crust cannot always hold the pressure from below. Sometimes the Earth releases its breath in sudden bursts. Earthquakes remind us that the crust is not invulnerable. It slips, stutters, adjusts. Volcanoes erupt, reshaping land and atmosphere in hours. These events are not punishments, they are part of a cycle. They are the voice of a planet that must move to remain alive. And after the shaking ends, after the ash settles, life begins again. New soil, new rivers, new ecosystems. The Earth heals through motion. In places where hot springs bubble from fractures in the crust, we find the gentler side of this expression. These are the quiet sighs of the Earth, places where the warmth of the mantle meets the skin of the world in pools of steam and mineral-rich water. People have gathered around these springs for centuries, not just for comfort, but for communion. To bathe in a hot spring is to touch something deep, something ancient and constant. It is to be held, if only briefly, by the Earth's own warmth. And above this ever-moving crust lives everything we know: forests and cities, oceans and deserts, paths worn by feet and by time. Trees stretch roots into stone, rivers cut canyons through granite, buildings rise and fall with the stability we trust. Yet that trust is built on layers always in motion. The irony is quiet but profound. We build permanence on impermanence, stillness on the back of movement. Yet this is not a mistake. It is a reflection of who we are. We too are shaped by unseen forces, moulded by pressure, changed by time. Even our bodies echo the Earth. Our bones are made from calcium drawn from ancient seas. Our blood carries iron, born in the planet's core, formed in stars even older. We drink from stone, eat from soil, rest on a land that rises and falls beneath us. We are not visitors on this crust. We are its children, and its story is ours. So when we listen to the quiet of a stone path, or place our hand on the warmth of sunlit rock, or hear the low rumble of distant thunder echoing through valleys, we are touching that story. When we feel the tremble of an earthquake, it is not a threat. It is a whisper from below, a reminder that the world is not still. that beneath every quiet meadow lies a conversation as old as the planet itself. The Earth's crust is thin, but it holds vastness. It is the skin of memory, the boundary between fire and sky, and it is enough for us to stand on, to grow within, to wander from. Beneath it the planet dreams, and above it life listens. The whispers continue not to frighten but to remind. That movement is not failure. That change is not chaos. That even the slowest breath taken deep in the dark can shape everything above it. And so we walk, softly, unknowingly carried by the patient, shifting strength of a world that has never stopped speaking. And if we pause long enough beneath the silence of trees, beside the stillness of stones, we might just hear it. That ancient whisper rising up from the depths, saying gently, "I am still becoming." At first glance, a stone is a final thing, hard, silent, unmoving. It seems to hold no breath, no softness, no life. It lies on the ground, unyielding to touch, indifferent to time. But beneath that stillness, there is a journey. And within that hardness, a beginning. For stone does not stay stone forever. It cracks, it weathers, it softens, and over centuries beyond counting, it begins to crumble grain by grain into something that can hold life. This is the story of how stone becomes soil, not through sudden change, but through quiet transformation, a process so slow and so gentle that it could be mistaken for stillness. Yet it is one of the most important processes on Earth, for without it there would be no fields, no forests, no gardens or grasses, or breath. It is the Earth's way of preparing itself for life, of offering the surface back to the sky in a form that can nourish and grow. Begins with weather, not the fierce kind that shouts with thunder, but the patient kind, wind that carries dust, rain that seeps into cracks, sunlight that warms and cools with rhythmic insistence. These forces visit every stone, every boulder, every cliff face. They find the hidden weaknesses, the thin lines where the rock once cooled unevenly, the tiny air pockets trapped within. Water slips in, freezes, expands. The rock does not scream, but it splits. Heat causes the surface to swell by day and contract by night. Wind brushes away what breaks loose. Over decades, what was once a jagged face becomes a crumbling edge. What was once unbreakable begins to soften. Lichens are among the first life forms to arrive. They are not quite plants, not quite fungi, but something in between, a partnership of algae and fungus, surviving where nothing else can. They cling to bare rock, holding tight with thread-like roots, handing out mild acids that break down the minerals beneath them. They are gentle sculptors, turning stone into sand, opening the first door towards soil. Mosses follow, then grasses. Each new layer of life brings more water, more acids, more breaking down. And with each crack, each crumble, the rock lets go of minerals, once locked inside, potassium, calcium, magnesium, iron, all becoming part of something softer, something fertile. As rock breaks into smaller pieces, other forces join the transformation. Rain carries organic matter, fallen leaves, the bodies of insects, the waste of birds, into the cracks and hollows. This material mixes with the mineral dust, forming the first true soil. It is thin, fragile, easy to wash away, but it holds potential. Seeds find it, roots press into it, microbes awaken within it, feeding on decay and breathing out nutrients. The soil thickens, it darkens, it begins to smell of life. Beneath the surface, a hidden network begins to form. Fungal threads, called mycelium, stretch through the soil like veins of intention. They connect plant roots to each other, sharing water, sharing messages, trading nutrients for sugars. These fungi thrive on the minerals released from stone and the carbon provided by plants. They are the translators between the mineral and the biological, the stone and the root, the earth and the tree. Through them, the breath of stone becomes the breath of forests. Soil continues to change with depth. The top layer, rich in organic matter, is where most life lives. Worms, beetles, bacteria, roots, and the countless invisible dancers that shape the ground. Below that lies the subsoil, where minerals accumulate, where roots stretch in search of water, where clay holds the memory of floods. And deeper still is the parent rock, not yet soil but no longer untouched. It is cracked, weathered, laced with water and life's intent. This vertical journey is a record of time, thousands of years compressed into a few feet. A thin skin, yes, but one that holds the rhythm of worlds. In forests, fallen leaves feed the soil with every season. In grasslands, roots die and regrow, pumping carbon into the earth and building structure. In deserts, soil forms slowly, aided by rare rains and wind-carried seeds. In wetlands, organic material builds in layers, forming peat and muck, thick with the scent of decomposition. Every ecosystem writes its own version of soil, shaped by climate, by geology, by time, and in each, the story of stone turning to breath continues. Even now, in places where rock seems eternal, high cliffs, mountain faces, canyon walls, the process continues. Rain still falls, ice still forms, seeds still find purchase in the tiniest cracks. Trees grow where there is barely any soil, their roots gripping stone like fingers holding a memory. And over centuries, even there, the rock yields. It does not surrender in defeat, but in generosity. It gives its minerals to the wind, to the root, to the worm, to the world. And so soil is not merely dirt. It is the final breath of stone, the result of countless seasons of touch, of time, of quiet transformation. It is where the mineral becomes biological, where the inanimate becomes a cradle for life. And though we may scatter it with every step, it is not lost. It continues its cycle, gathering, decaying, forming again. In a handful of soil you hold more life than people on the planet. Bacteria and fungi, mites and nematodes, seeds and spores, each living in the space between sand grains, each contributing to the fertility, the structure, the spirit of the earth. This is not chaos, it is choreography, a dance of decay and renewal, of stone giving way to root, of time moving through matter like breath. And so when you walk through a field, or kneel in a garden, or touch the earth with bare hands, remember what you're touching. Not just the end of erosion, but the beginning of growth. Not just broken stone, but transformed stone. Soil is not the absence of rock. It is the fulfillment of its promise. It is the place where stone learns how to nourish, how to hold, how to live. The breath of stone does not come in gasps or winds. It comes in silence, in stillness, in the gradual gift of minerals to the waiting world. And with every root that finds its way into a crack, with every seed that sprouts in a shadow, the earth exhales again, gently, patiently, into soil. Let us now follow the journey deeper, Not downward into the rock this time, but forward through the soil itself, through the breath that has already begun, through the particles now softened and mingled with life. Soil, though quiet, is not still. It is a living medium, a slow river of transformation, always changing, always moving, always listening to what falls from above and what pushes from below. With every passing season, it reshapes itself. Leaves decay, roots deepen, microbes multiply. Water seeps through its pores, carrying minerals and messages, feeding the trees, the flowers, the grass. The breath of stone, now joined with the pulse of life, expands into something more. A foundation not just for growth, but for connection. Soil becomes not only a place for things to live, but a network through which they speak and support. Imagine a forest floor in early spring. The snow has just melted, and the earth is damp, dark, and soft beneath your feet. This is not the same soil that lay there a year ago. It has changed. The worms have returned to the surface, stirring the layers, digesting the leaves that fell the autumn before. Bacteria bloom in response to warmth and moisture, breaking down dead roots and organic debris into compounds that plants can absorb. Fungi spread silently, reaching farther, forming alliances with roots that are just beginning to awaken. And above all of this, new seeds begin to stir. They do not rush, but they feel the shift. The soil tells them when it is time, and in response they grow. Each seed, each sprout, each root becomes a thread in this vast tapestry. And yet it would mean little without the soil to hold it. Soil is not just a container, it is a partner. It offers support, yes, but also nutrients. Calcium for structure, potassium for fruiting, nitrogen for leaves. It offers texture and temperature. It buffers extremes, holds moisture, shelters life from harsh sun and sudden frost. And it remembers. It remembers what grew last year and the year before. It holds the residue of every plant, every insect, every rain. These residues shape what comes next, what flourishes, what fades, what feeds the next generation. And yet soil does not act alone. The organisms within it are many, and they are not passive. Bacteria form biofilms, clinging to particles and processing nutrients. Some fix nitrogen from the air, transforming it into a form that roots can absorb. Others break down toxins, purify water, or protect plants from disease. Earthworms digest organic matter, creating tunnels that let air and water in. Ants rearrange grains, carrying seeds and detritus into deeper layers. Nematodes regulate microbial populations. Fungal networks transport phosphorus across feet or even meters of ground. This is not chaos. It is a system, a society, a living conversation beneath our feet. Even the smell of soil, rich, earthy, grounding, is a sign of life. That scent, known as petrichor when released after rain, comes in part from geosmin, a compound produced by bacteria that live in moist earth. It is a perfume of the planet, a reminder that what lies beneath is not just decay, but renewal, and it is universal. From mountaintop meadows to rainforest floors to backyard gardens, the breath of soil rises in this scent, a whisper of life reborn from stone. But soil is also fragile. Though it takes centuries to form a few inches, it can be lost in a single storm. When forests are cleared, when roots are removed, when the living cover is stripped away, soil loses its cohesion. Wind lifts it, rain carries it. What took generations to become can vanish into rivers and oceans in days. And yet, even in this loss, soil remembers how to heal. Grasses return. Small plants hold what remains. Microbes rebuild. The crust of life, called biocrust in deserts and drylands, begins to form, a layer of mosses, lichens and cyanobacteria that stabilize the ground and retain moisture and prepare the way for more complex life. This memory of recovery is not quick, but it is persistent. In abandoned fields, soil slowly regathers its fertility. In old battlefields, wildflowers bloom. In cities, even in the cracks of sidewalks and the corners of parking lots, weeds and moss find a way to return. The breath of soil is not broken, it is only delayed. Given time, given stillness, given even the smallest touch of green, it resumes. Beneath all of this lies a kind of map, not drawn in ink but layered in texture and colour and chemistry. A cross-section of soil reveals horizons, distinct bands formed over time. The topsoil, dark and rich with organic matter, is where most life resides. Below it, the subsoil holds leached minerals, the memory of rain. Deeper still is the weathered rock, the fractured parent material slowly crumbling toward its future. And below that, the bedrock, the stone still waiting to begin its transformation. These layers are not uniform. In the tropics, soil forms rapidly, and nutrients are quickly used. In Arctic tundra, soil is thin and frozen for much of the year, yet bursts into life each summer. In prairies, roots run deep, holding vast stores of carbon, feeding herds and fire. Each soil is a mirror of its landscape. Each one breathes differently, but all are alive, all are becoming, all are part of the same slow breath that began with stone and now feeds the sky. Because yes, soil does not only serve the ground, it connects to the air. Through plant roots and microbial respiration, carbon is stored or released. Through transpiration and evaporation, water rises and forms clouds. Through decay, nutrients are released that return eventually to rivers, to oceans, to wind. The breath of soil joins the great cycle of Earth, the carbon cycle, the nitrogen cycle, the water cycle. These are not abstract systems, they are the planet's own way of staying alive, and soil is at the heart of them all. So when we till the land, when we plant or harvest, when we walk through fields or dig in gardens, we are not separate from this process. We are part of it. Our own breath depends on it. Our food, our water, our shelter all begin with soil. And soil in turn begins with stone. With rock weathered into sand, sand bound with organic matter. Life shaped by time and returned to the ground in gratitude. The transformation continues. The breath deepens. And the earth, in its quiet patience, keeps preparing the ground for what comes next. Let us now follow the breath of soil to its quiet conclusion. Not an end, but a rest, a settling. For after stone has broken and softened, after the lichens and roots have done their gentle carving, after the rains have fallen and the worms have tunneled and the fungi have spread their delicate threads, what remains is something sacred. Soil is not only a mixture of minerals and matter, but a memory of all that has touched the earth. It holds the stories of every fallen leaf, every creature returned to ground, every fire that scattered ash, every breeze that dropped pollen across a meadow. It is a keeper of time, not in clocks but in cycles, not in minutes but in layers and depth. And when we sink our hands into it, When we feel the cool grain of it slip between our fingers, we are touching the breath of the world made solid. This soil does not remain static. It is constantly in motion, not always in space but in character. It absorbs, releases, shifts. The carbon it stores today may rise tomorrow as gas through a root's exhale. The nitrogen it captures through bacteria may feed a flower, a tree, a passing bee. And when that flower dies, when its petals fall and rot and melt into the ground, the soil receives it again. It is not a one-way path. It is a spiral. Nothing is lost. Everything returns in some form to begin again. Even in the coldest winters, beneath snow and ice, microbial life continues its quiet work. Roots rest, seeds sleep. But beneath the stillness, the breath endures. In this way, soil is a cradle. It holds beginnings in its darkness, the start of forests, the spark of crops, the germ of ecosystems. It also holds the fading of things, the gentle letting go. When animals die, when trees fall, when fire sweeps through grasslands, the soil does not resist. It receives. And in that receiving, it transforms. Charred wood becomes carbon. Flesh becomes nutrient. Loss becomes growth. The breath of soil is not only about building. It is about returning, about embracing the fullness of cycles, about knowing that nothing truly disappears. This understanding is ancient. Long before science gave names to nitrogen fixation or microbial respiration, humans revered the earth beneath their feet. They understood with hands and hearts that the soil was sacred. In myths and rituals, in offerings buried and crops planted by moonlight, they spoke to the soil and listened for its answers. They knew that what grew depended on what had been, and that every harvest was a kind of gift. And though the modern world often forgets, the soil still remembers. It still holds the footprints of ancestors. It still echoes with the songs of those who worked it with respect. And now, in this age of awareness, we are beginning to remember too. We learn how over-tilling breaks the structure, how chemicals can silence the microbial song, how erosion strips the land of its breath. But we also learn how to heal, how to plant cover crops that protect, how to use compost to feed, how to let the fungi return, how to listen once more. Regenerative agriculture, rewilding, no-dig gardening, these are not new ideas. They are old songs, sung again in a language the earth has never forgotten. In urban spaces, where concrete seems to silence the ground, soil still waits. In community gardens tucked between buildings, in planters on balconies, in parks and roadside verges, it breathes. Worms return. Roots seek out the cracks. Rain brings the scent of petrichor even to the busiest street. The breath of stone, of soil, does not need vast forests or endless fields. It only needs space to be itself, to continue its quiet transformation beneath the soles of our shoes. Even in deserts, where the air is dry and life seems spare, soil breathes. Biological crusts form, a mosaic of cyanobacteria, lichens, mosses, holding the surface together, fixing nitrogen, catching the faintest dew. They are slow to form but persistent. Step on them, and they take decades to heal. Leave them be and they cradle seeds, fill terrain, soften winds. They are reminders that even in the harshest places the earth exhales. In wetlands, soil becomes saturated, layered with decaying plants rich in carbon. It slows the movement of water, filters it, holds it like a memory. In mountains, thin soils cradle alpine flowers. In valleys, deep loam feeds vast fields. Each soil speaks with a different voice, shaped by climate, time and life. But all of them, everywhere, share a breath that began with stone, a breath that carries minerals through roots, that holds the scent of rain, that turns the dead into nourishment and the fallen into foundation. And so, when we speak of soil, we are not speaking only of farming or gardening or earth beneath our feet. We are speaking of the most intimate relationship we have with the planet, the place where the ancient and the present meet, the skin between sky and stone, the gentle record keeper of all that has grown, fallen, returned. It is the softest, yet most powerful layer of the earth, and it began, ago, as a rock. This is the breath of stone becoming soil. It does not shout, it does not hurry, it does not seek praise, it simply continues layer by layer, season by season, root by root. It is the earth remembering how to nurture, and in that memory it carries us all. So the next time you kneel in a garden, or step into a forest, or pass a patch of earth after rain, pause for a moment, look down, feel the ground, and listen. Beneath your feet the stone still breathes, and through that breath life continues.